excited about where the HVAC world is and the home performance world is right now. If the world went away tomorrow and somebody was like, we're going to rebuild the world at some point in time.
That's where everything's moving and you got all this energy and everything down there.
So you're going to be able to say, hey, we know coming up, Mr. and Mrs. Johnson, you are going to need to replace your system. A building science rabbit hole with Neil Goldman, owner of Less Energy out of Philadelphia. Neil comes at this industry from a pretty unique angle. He's worked in high performance housing, HERS ratings, passive house verification, construction management, energy auditing, and even large building blower door testing. In fact, he recently became Philadelphia's first inspector for blower door code compliance. But this conversation gets into something bigger than certifications. What happens to HVAC when you take a building from 5 air changes per hour down to around a half air change per hour? What happens when the heating and cooling loads get so small that finding equipment that actually fits the load becomes a challenge? And how the hell do you properly balance ventilation when you're trying to deliver 6, 10, or 15 CFM to a room? We get into passive house envelopes, ERVs, low-load HVAC systems, big building blower door testing, say that 3 times fast, airflow measurement, and some of the new all-in-one mechanical systems trying to solve heating, cooling, and ventilation with a single box. But we also get into one of my favorite subjects, verification. Because you can put whatever certification sticker or rating you want on a house, but somebody still has to prove the damn thing actually works. Neil and I definitely have some opinions about that. So buckle up, this one gets technical. We chase a few rabbits, and we probably step on a couple along the way. This is HVAC ADHD. Let's get into it. Hey everybody, welcome to the HVAC ADHD Vodcast. I'm your host, Jeremy Begley. I got a really cool episode today. I'm here with Neil Goldman of Less Energy, and it's spelled out on his hat in a very unique way. So you can let you see it. Neil's a HERS rater, a passive home guy, and a bunch of other stuff too. Him and I have had some really cool conversations. I wanted to bring it to the show. So Neil, tell everybody about yourself and what you do and how you got here.
Sure. Thanks, Jeremy. Excited to be here. Thanks for having me on. I started my career in Louisiana working for Habitat for Humanity, doing an AmeriCorps year there. I did the second AmeriCorps year in Paterson, New Jersey. In both places, they were building Energy Star homes, and I learned a lot, starting right from scratch with the homes. From there, I worked for the Clean Energy Program in New Jersey, doing technical inspections. I was driving around the state of New Jersey, sort of looking at all these different large rating companies every day just for the program, making sure they were doing the right thing, doing follow-up inspections and doing my own inspections behind them. I learned a ton. We're doing inspections of tract homes and basically any home in New Jersey that was getting certified, I saw for a 4-year period. So I learned a ton about the industry. From there, I moved to work with a architecture and engineering firm called Kitchen Associates. So I got a bit of the design and implementation of the architecture and engineering. And from there, I moved to work as a builder. I got kind of tired of just looking at things and sort of telling people what was wrong and right. And so I wanted to learn more about the construction side. So actually, while I was working at Kitchen Associates, I got my master's in construction management. So once I completed that, I left and I worked for a few construction companies as a project manager, managing a bunch of single-family row homes all the way up to single-family high-end residential construction. And then I left that because I was a little tired of doing a few bathroom renovations and started my own company 3 years ago. So Less Energy is a lot of things, but we focus on building energy efficiency. So we do everything from large building blower testing to energy audits of existing row homes in Philadelphia. So yeah, we're based in Philadelphia.
Big building testing. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So you are doing big building testing. That is not something that every HERS rater does. Tell me one thing. How did you get in first? Where did your first bit of big building testing business come from?
Sure. So I've done a few big building tests and I'm trying to do more. So the first one I did was probably back in 2018. It was on a passive house, 25 unit passive house building. But with a passive house, you don't need that many blower doors because the envelope is so tight. But there was like several different envelope sectioned off area.
Let's tell everybody, my audience probably doesn't know a lot about passive homes. So let's go ahead and clearly define what that is and what it means from building envelope standpoint, mechanical systems, things like that. And then we'll jump back into the building piece of it, because I think what you're about to describe is something that a lot of people won't have context for unless we tell them what the actual building construction is.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. So a passive house, which is a German term for very energy efficient house, basically, it is a certification and it is a building practice. There's actually two certifications, but we don't need to go into that. Two different certifications. There's an international one and a US based one. And we could go down the rabbit hole of the differences between them, but it doesn't matter so much for our conversation. So the basic principles of a passive home are 5 things. The envelope is really well insulated. It's a good envelope, well insulated, airtight, really good windows that are sized properly and facing the right direction. So that's 2 things, actually. It's good windows and proper orientation. And then there's really good ventilation, which, to make sure that the people inside get all the air they need, and then without losing too much energy. And the last thing would be low energy load, so consuming as little energy as possible. So, sizing the systems and the appliances to use as little energy as possible.
So to break that down a little bit for the people watching, first let's talk about the envelope. You said really good insulation. I think that undersells what a passive home actually is from an insulation standpoint. Really good insulation means really good insulation. So typically,
Sure, yeah.
what's a typical wall structure and what's a typical attic structure for that? Or what's your overall goal as far as the thermal profile of the whole entire envelope, from the roof to the building? Like, what's that usually look like from an R value?
Sure. So as I said, I'm located in Philadelphia. So for our climate zone, and it would differ, right? You'd want more insulation the colder it was, and you can get away with less insulation in the warmer climates. There's more implications that come with the warmer climates and the humidity versus dry climates. But as far as insulation goes in Philadelphia, we're typically looking for about R20 under the slab, and that's below grade. And then it would be R20 for like any other below grade walls, foundation walls, R40 for the walls. And that would be with at least like R20 of continuous insulation, meaning that the structure is separated from the exterior conditions continuously. The structure doesn't come through. So you typically see like a couple inches of rock wool or rigid board on the outside of the building, and then the siding. And then for the roof, you'd want to have at least R60 on the roof. And
now,
that would be
compare
continuous as well.
Compare that to your code there, what you guys have for code right now.
So that's an interesting question, and we're going to talk about it a little bit later too. We may talk about the large building testing, but Pennsylvania just adopted into 26, they adopted the 2021 IECC, but they did not update the insulation values in the energy section. So in Pennsylvania generally, and Philadelphia did the same thing, but they kept it a little stricter, but it's basically still R20 in the walls and R49 in the attic and R10 under a slab. And you probably don't have to do the entire under the slab. It's just like...
And the most important feature, I feel anyway, is 0.5 ACH 50 versus what in your area?
We are still at 5 air changes.
So 0.5 versus 5. So audience members, step back and think about what we just described. So this is a house that's significantly better than code. So we're talking about a 20 R value of 20 difference in roof cavities. It's about double in the walls. It's about double in the slab. It's 4 times less the leakage of a typical building. So like, this is the building that he's talking about putting blower doors on for a large building. Now a lot of passive home, because of the cost, it's starting to make sense on single family residential a little bit, but traditionally it's made a lot more sense on bigger buildings because you're spreading it out over a bigger area and the dollar per square foot becomes less for what you're doing. So it makes a lot of sense. And they've been able to implement it on larger buildings first and then make the case for the smaller buildings using the larger buildings. Would you say that's a fair assessment of what's went on in that market? Or
Yeah, I would agree with a lot of that. I think that there's a lot of economies of scale for this stuff because, you're building a lot all at once. So, the insulation across the entire face is a lot easier to do than all the little turns of a single family house. The builders are usually a little bit more savvy, so they're able to pick up on the details a little easier. I also think there's a bunch of benefit to using large building systems. So when you have an ERV that is serving the entire building, it's a lot more efficient and a lot more cost effective than having an ERV in each unit.
And from a design standpoint, that's a lot easier to accomplish when there's not a lot of outside air moving around trying to defeat the air that you're trying to deliver and remove for ventilation purposes. So like the fact that these buildings are 0.5 ACH 50 makes a huge difference in the type of systems and the type of flexibility that we have when it comes to systems. It's also limiting in some ways too, but there's also really a lot. It gets harder to balance and some other things, but as far as systems go, the limitation I think is then and we'll talk about this maybe a little later, but you have to put smaller systems in and it gets a little bit challenging on what that looks like for that type of structure. Now,
absolutely.
Back to the big building thing, give the audience an idea. Okay, so how many blower doors for a house like this or a building like this, a big blower door versus what would you expect if it was a code built building and they ask you to do the same exact test?
So, it's hard to compare things sometimes. So one blower door can move about 5,000 CFM of air. And in, let's say, these are very round, rough numbers, please don't hold me to this, but in a 3,000 square foot house, 5,000 ACH would be like 15 or 5,000 CFM, sorry, that's how much air the fan would move out of the building. That would be like 15 ACH or something crazy, right? Like a lot of air. I think this 25 unit, and this is years ago, but if I had to remember, this 25 unit passive house, I think had something like 400 CFM in just the whole building leakage. So it's like, I only needed, I could have done it with a duct blaster fan probably, but the complication with doing large building testing is there often isn't one zone. Like in a single family house, you could open all the doors on the inside, do one test, it's fine. But with a large building, there's often many different zones. So you have to use different blower doors in different parts of the building to sort of equalize the entire building as you test it. So if that building the 25 unit building was code compliant, which it's a different metric, but they're looking for, I believe it's 0.5 CFM per square foot of surface area of the exterior of the building. And just to take a little detour of the conversation, the ACH number is about the volume of air in the building exchanging, which doesn't scale properly from a small building to a large building. And so the standards are changing to the amount of leakage versus exterior surface area of the building. So there's this big shift and it's like sort of happening in the code too. So they're going from things like 3 and 5 ACH to 3 CFM, 3 cubic feet per minute at 50 pascals per square foot of surface area. So it's changing a little bit and it scales properly. So basically to meet that requirement, you have to get the building. Sorry, we're talking more about the amount of blower doors you need for a large building. So a 25 unit building like that, trying to meet the current code, I would probably need something like 5 or 6 blower doors, and it would be somewhere like 3,000 or 4,000, or no, something like 20,000 CFM of leakage.
Yeah, that sounds about right to me.
Yeah, and they would be spread throughout the building. On the top and the bottom, there's like all this other stuff you have to deal with like when the building's tall, there's a real big stack effect, and you have to sort of fight that with the fans in the right places.
Yeah, and that's another thing. You don't have a lot of stack effect in a passive home either. I mean, it just is what it is.
Not at all. Yeah. It's very easy to test a passive house when it's done right.
And passive building. So that's sort of like the envelope side of everything that you deal with when you're dealing with a passive house. Talk a little bit about the HVAC system. It's wildly different even in residential
Sure.
And big buildings are going to follow that track to some extent. So
Yeah.
talk a little bit about those differences.
Yeah, sure. So a passive house, because the envelope is so good, it's going to have a much lower load. The windows are better, so they're being better insulated. They're going to have really good solar gain protection. There's even requirements for, solar shading for certain windows that are faced the right direction. So the loads are dramatically reduced. There's not a lot of, controlling the amount of outside air that comes in the building. So with that, you're going to have smaller systems. And those smaller systems sometimes don't exist. So there's all these requirements, like you can't oversize your system, especially on the air conditioning side, because it will, well, I'm sure you can speak to much better than I can, short cycling and lack of dehumidification. So when you have really small system, very low load home, you can cool it down really quickly, but that's not necessarily what you want. So there's a lot of dehumidification problems, I think, in some of these homes. And then I think some of the other issues, since the house is so tight, people need to breathe, not buildings, but the people in the house need to breathe. So we introduced ventilation, and it is typically balanced ventilation, meaning we're bringing in air at the same rate that we're exhausting it. And with that balanced ventilation, we are recovering the heat from the air that we're exhausting by sort of mixing it with the incoming air using an ERV, typically in this climate zone. So with these ERVs, the passive house standard has a very strict balancing and supply requirement. They, something like, so first of all of the air, all supply air has to go to all the bedrooms. So every bedroom needs to be constantly supplied with fresh air from the outside. And all of the kitchen and the bathrooms need to be exhausted from the outside. So that creates a lot of extra ductwork in a house, which can be difficult to route through a small house, especially when you want that 6-inch line, hard pipe going through everywhere. But these numbers can be pretty small because it'll be like 15 CFM going to a bedroom. And they want it to be within 10% of the design value, which is like 3 CFM or something. And so it becomes very difficult to make sure the system's balanced. So I find a lot of people struggling with dampers in the right places and just like finding places to put the ductwork through because it's a lot of extra stuff.
Do you see a lot of Zender ERV, or what's the main?
Yeah. Well, there's all kinds of strategies. Zender is like, the Cadillac of it, and
Zender's
it's
God.
great, but what?
I said Zender's God.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, there's a few systems that sort of replicate that, but from a testing and verification point, as a HERS rater, I love to see a Zender system because I'm like, oh, okay, great, it's going to work because it's got all these pipes. But I see a lot of things. I mean, Panasonic makes good ERVs, but you have to do all the ductwork, so you need the space for it. And then a lot of Renew Air, a lot of all kinds of systems. I think the interesting thing is the difference between how they're delivered. So often people want to just dump it right into the return plenum of their the rest of the duct system. And then, for a passive house, you have to deliver the air all the time. So then they're running the fan in their air handler all the time to deliver that air.
Whoever that designer is, I fire it. I mean, that's not a great strategy for passive home.
It happens all the time.
I see people trying to, I mean, it just, I hate it. So, hey,
why do you hate it?
The air, delivering it into the air system for a passive home and trying to deliver the air. Are you sick? Just let me make sure I understand what I'm saying. I hate, but you're saying that it's the ERV is connected into the return side of the
supply of the ERV. Right.
But it's the air handler. They're using the air handler on the house to move the air, correct? Something like that. Yeah, that's not great. I mean, it's not my favorite thing for a million different reasons, but one of them is that you don't have the same type of control over the ventilation air, especially when you're getting down to those low values, and you don't know what the really mixing air is when the system comes on. So like I prefer a lot more control over the design, and I want to be able to control my ventilation, especially in a passive home or something that tight. Like I want to be able to control the ventilation and design the ventilation to get to the people on a consistent basis. And I want to control the air conditioning, being dehumidification and the cooling systems and heating systems to operate when they need to operate. Those two things together are not all from a static pressure standpoint, from an airflow delivery standpoint, from an order and operation standpoint. Like there's a bunch of different reasons that system that works okay. It's not even great in a code build house, but it works okay in a code build house will almost never work correctly in a passive home situation.
I mean, I didn't like it. But I didn't really have a reason to. I'm just like, it's good to hear, like, because I try to push back on that stuff, but I am not an HVAC designer, so I don't always have the best reasons. Like, I don't like it mostly because I can't measure and verify that as you said, that air is going to those spaces it's supposed to.
Correct. It's the same. You're saying the same thing. I say I want to control it. You're the guy who verifies it. You're saying it's hard to verify. The control is the verification. Like these are the same. This is the same reasoning, just from two different perspectives. But you're 100% right, and this reason is the same exact reason that you're saying. Like for sure.
Yeah. But yeah, that happens a lot. And then, I mean, even when they do duct it to the rooms, like it is so hard. Nobody balances it. I end up being the balancer. And it often is really difficult to get the air to go, because it's like the last thing on anybody's mind. The ducts always get crushed. It's always like flex stuck to the end and nobody wants, it's always difficult.
Yeah, it's so funny to hear you say that about a passive home. Like people imagine, and even myself too, imagine like, oh, passive home, everything's getting paid attention to. There's order of operations, all the trades are working together. There's no fresh ducts. Like that is the picture that people picture, this perfect little thing that's going to work great. But then when we get into it, it has the same base problems that all these other projects do for the same reasons, because something was not controlled the way it should have been.
You're selling me as a verifier. Like this is what I tell people all the time. Yep. My job, like Energy Star certification, I think most houses could reach at a minimum, new construction houses at a minimum could reach Energy Star certification if they have a rater, because it's mostly quality control. It's mostly me going out there. It's me reviewing the drawings, doing an energy model, making sure it's like meeting the thing, and then going out there, working with the builder all the time. Slabs insulated, right? The wall, every pre-drywall inspection I go on for Energy Star, I always find insulation issues every time. It's always a small thing. This bay's missing insulation. They didn't get behind there, but I'm quality control. And I think that like it's a big thing missing from our industry. I think people assume that like code inspection is the quality control, but it is not.
Yeah, that's my whole entire thing is verified. I don't know if you've been on our website or not, but we have our whole entire product line is called verified, and that's all I believe in. I don't care about any of these programs. I grew up in all of them. I worked in all of them. I'm certified in most of them. But like I've seen bad houses across the board in every single program, every single house that I've been in. Like I've seen shit not working right. I've seen people crying because they can't sleep upstairs in their brand new house. I've seen it all in a quote unquote certified home. So like, I don't believe really in any of that stuff. That's a mechanism for financing as far as I'm concerned, and for trying to create revenue and stuff like that. But like,
that's so
from
sad
the big
for me
picture,
to hear.
It all comes down to the guy. It all comes down to you, really. Like it all comes down to the guy verifying the project. And so like, for our perspective, it's like, we want to see two things. One, I want to see the building around the system verified, and that it's actually the system that's getting it's actually the building that the system's getting designed for. So that means if you tell me 3 air changes, somebody verified 3 air changes. If you tell me it's R19 and R5 at continuous, and somebody verified that's what it is, like all the things that HERS raters do. I mean, even our main product, which is Whole Home Performance Verified, uses the combination of an ERI or an ERI rating, whether it's HERS or BSI, and a measure quick benchmark. Like those two things are all that you need, as long as the guy doing the verification knows what he's looking at and is really verifying stuff and holding the feet to the fire and all that. Like
that's the problem. I like 95% agree with you, because the HERS ratings and Energy Star certification has gotten a really bad name in the industry over the past 20 years, because most of the work is done by these giant companies for financing. Like affordable housing requires Energy Star, or these big builders, Pulte or I don't know the name, Ryan Homes, all these people are building these giant tract developments, and they use the Energy Star label, and they get these big HERS rating companies to just rubber stamp everything, and nothing is actually
real. And I've seen some behind the scenes on some of these companies that have gotten in trouble and stuff like that. And what they're charging is absurd, dude. Nobody can compete with it. They're like $100 for a freaking TBR. You know what I mean? Like
they don't think it's drive by and rubber stamp.
Yeah, they're not even they're not doing it. It's bottom line. If you're charging somebody $100 for a TBI, you never even went out there. If you did, you're fucking broke. You lost every dime you ever made. Like I swear,
ResNet.
if that's really what you're doing, you're the dumbest businessman on earth, or you're a scam artist. One of the two. Like there's no in between.
I don't know how much they're charging, but I think that ResNet is the HERS rating body is starting to crack down on some of that stuff. But if you're going to get a HERS rater,
we'll see. They're putting,
they crack down on me as an individual HERS rater. It's so difficult. I have so much QA, so much. It's like impossible for me to cheat anything. But those bigger companies are their own QA. And they just can certify things. That
is the whole thing. Once you have the provider, the fox in the hen house, dude, you might as well fucking throw the whole thing out. Once the provider sitting there, like, and I don't, some, like my best friend, one of my best friends, he's a provider and he runs raters. Like, there's guys out there that do the right thing, but it's too easy to not do the right thing, dude. You know what I mean? And like, at some point in time, it's going to be like, we're going to lose this client or we're going to do some nefarious shit for him. And every single time it's like, we can't lose this guy. So we got to do what we got to do.
Well, this is where code comes in. At least code, as it's getting updated, the real 2021 energy code is close to what Energy Star currently is. It has ventilation requirements. It has the blower door requirements. It has the insulation levels. It's there, right? But the enforcement's the key. So to go back to what we were talking about before, I just became the first special inspector in the city of Philadelphia for blower door code compliance. So they're starting to really crack down on these things. And before, anybody could be the blower door guy and just show up and it would be the same problem. But now you have to be a special inspection agency and report all this stuff that you're doing. It's like a real thing, finally.
That's pretty cool, dude. I never even heard of that. Whenever it is, that sounds like the FBI of HERS ratings or something.
Well, we have special inspectors in the city for structural reasons or whatever. You go to build something weird, you have to get a special inspection from a third party. And so now they've added blower door testing to that world of special inspections. So I think I'm the first one and only right now. So
I think verification can get easier. I think the technology that we have, there is an opportunity and we'll create something. By the end of this year, maybe the second quarter of next year, we'll have our verified app out. And it's all based on, hey, you want to do business with us? You want to install our services that we design? Download this app. Here's the 5 things you got to verify at TBI as an installer. Here's what we expect from Measure Quick to see back into the system to verify. And then we're going to keep a record of it with a QR code right on the system. Like, boom, here's where it was verified. Anybody that comes in the house can QR scan that and see what the verification was, because that is the only thing that matters. Benchmarking is all that matters, man. Really.
That's awesome. Yeah. That's like sort of what Energy Star and ResNet was supposed to be. You're supposed to be able to go to the ResNet registry and check it out. But as we were just talking about, it's not exactly
or you can
foolproof.
Jump through every piece of red tape that they have and maybe get somewhere.
How close is your verification thing to the HVAC grading in Energy Star? Because I do that a lot.
It follows. I mean, I use that list. The ResNet standards are legit, dude. You know what I mean? ResNet is legit. There's some issues with the modeling and this thing don't model as good as this thing or whatever, but you got to have something somewhere. You know what I mean? So like from that perspective, model works. You can use it for a lot of stuff, but you got to have the people, and the standards are good, like the testing protocols and all that stuff. That all matters. You have to have something to follow, and I would never veer away from that. That and the BPI standards for existing homes, I believe in all that stuff wholly. You know, I came up through that existing home BPI pathway, so that stuff is legit, dude. You know what I mean? But it's all about the people implementing it and the way that it's implemented. And I believe that we can follow that pathway and do just pure verification, none of this other programmatic stuff that goes along with it. And as long as the performance of the home and the performance of the system is verified for real, like everything is really tested and verified, as long as you have that picture, everything moving forward from that house gets easy. If something is a thermal problem, a comfort problem, an energy problem, like all you have to do is look back on that verification and say, okay, where were we? What was verified and what do we need to, what could be causing this problem? It's a great starting point.
Sounds so simple. I mean, too bad it doesn't really happen everywhere. I mean, it sounds like your system could work really well. I'll have to check it out because I get calls all the time from architects in the area that I know that are building a pretty nice house out in the suburbs or something. And they're like, we're not going to certify it. We're not going to, but we want you to come and do the inspections. It's like,
they want the same thing. They just don't.
Time. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like people now know they want this stuff. They just don't want to be dealing with bureaucracy to get it. You know what I mean, they just want a guy that's going to come out and tell them how to build a good house and make sure it happens. That's what they want. They're not looking for all these stickers on their house. That's why some guys are like, I have builders who are inside our program. They're like, can you create marketing and stuff like that to help us
Sure.
differentiate ourselves. But we can create legitimate, like we're basing everything on performance. So we can give you some really great marketing that uses some of the stuff that already exists to differentiate yourself and stand on our own philosophies as well, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I do like the just inspection thing, but I always suggest Energy Star certification because I think it's possible on most, especially if it's a high-end home, it's going to be certifiable, right? It's going to be 25% better than code. I could certify it. I could typically do all the inspections you wanted me to, do all the quality control. A little bit extra paperwork doesn't bother anyone. I do the HVAC grading. Nobody needs to be ACA certified. And in New Jersey and Pennsylvania, the two states I work the majority of, there's very good rebates. So typically all of my work is paid for when I get it certified. And people love it.
I mean,
So
that's great. That's awesome. Like
it's
those
like, I'm
don't
like
even
basically
exist.
free. Yeah.
State of Tennessee, there's no reason. We have no, down here, I'm in Tennessee now. I was in Cincinnati, Ohio. Cincinnati, Ohio, that's another. There was lead tax abatement. You could get $500,000 abated off your property tax if you did leave flat. You know, like,
Yeah,
there's
that's
a huge
all.
reason for people
I'm
to
not
do
a
that
huge
stuff.
fan. I mean, I like green building programs, but I'm more focused on the energy efficient ones because I feel like it's just building science and efficiency. So the green building programs, LEED and Living Building Challenge are all really great things. And I love that the industry is pushing that way. And I want more of it, but I don't think a lot of it's very practical and they don't understand the construction industry, right? There's all these costs and all the pressures and all these things that make it difficult to do those things. But Energy Star and Passive House, they don't care how you do it. They just, there's a billion pathways, a million ways to do it. It's just mostly about quality control. And then Passive House is just driving down the energy. And with that comes durability and health and all these other huge benefits. I don't think they're all those green building programs
I
just created
agree with
equal.
all the like what you're saying, the methodologies, and even Lead for Homes has some benefits to it. There's a lot of fluff in it. So there's some things that you don't. I was in a Lead for Homes program for years, and I know they lean on Energy Star. The entire Energy Star is a prerequisite. You got to do the whole entire Energy Star. It has a prerequisite. So
it makes sense.
It's short of getting certified. And then you do the green building stuff. So all that stuff has merit. And if it's verified correctly, it turns into a great environmental house. But to your point, the energy piece is always the biggest piece of it. The thermal, the building science piece, as you stated very, very eloquently, the building science piece of it is what matters the most and is what's going to make a good house. And so being an environmental steward is important, which is the other part of the LEED program. But for somebody that it does not have the means, because the only people I saw building those LEED houses were millionaires or people that had a bunch of money. You know what I mean? They were the only ones that were able to take advantage of that program and stuff like that. Nobody else, there wasn't no market rate people getting those homes. There wasn't any affordable housing that was done that way unless it was very specific in some kind of weird program. Habitat for Humanity, dude, those guys who you got your start with, they're a great example of an organization that sticks to the basic building science, builds people a great home, and does it for really cheap, man. That stuff has merits. I'm not saying it doesn't, but the point is, like, using Passive Home is a great example. I have 5 clients that I did HVAC design for that people were gung-ho, and they thought they were going to get certified Passive Home, but when it came down to the appliance part of it and the way that they had to live to get their appliance thing down to meet whatever it was to get certified, they decided, and there were some other things in the program, that extremes that they didn't want to go to, but they decided, hey, the Passive Home shell, awesome. I love it. I want to do that, but I don't really need the certification. And they stopped short of getting the certification. Every one of them did. Only one out of the 6 homes that I've done actually went all the way to, and they all started out. They had a Passive Home consultant. They had a Passive Home rater. They had all these different designers. They were doing all this great stuff. And then as we got down into the project, they just never got it certified. They did everything.
I mean, I'm sure the house is still good, right? I'd love to look at their energy bill, right? Like, I'm sure it's pretty good. I don't know if you ever heard of that book, like The Good Home, like The Really Good Home or something. It's
a
like
pretty good house. I think everybody should strive to build.
Yeah. I mean, I go through so many row homes in Philadelphia that just a little bit of spray foam here, seal up some rim joist or insulate the attic a little better would really help. And like I find so many problems and people are like so happy and it's like the lowest hanging fruit, but they have no idea, right? You do a blower door test and just like with the thermal imaging, just showing them, you're like, oh my God, wow, this is so you really can live in a pretty good house with just, like it's never going to be a passive house, right? But there's a lot of things you can do to make it pretty good, I think is the point.
Yeah, and there's a lot. I mean, you can swim towards passive house without going to that extreme. You know what I mean? There's a big gap between the code build house that we talked about and the passive home house that we talked about. Like, there's a thing in the middle that's way better than code, but not as good as passive home. That's a pretty awesome place to live. So
The zero energy ready home, right? It's because there's the certification
give it a
too,
name,
yeah.
right? Give
Well,
it a
no,
name,
it
but I can
exists.
get you there without any name. My whole thing is like, I don't need any of those names. I know what a good house is. Like, I will come out. I will say this. I'm going to put the credit where it belongs. Those programs, participating in them and going through all of that, taught me what a pretty good home is, and taught me what a really great home is, and taught me what an awesome home is. Like, without them, I know none of this. But I do not need for these clients to get certified as long as they have me or somebody like me. I don't need you to go through a certification. You know what I mean? That's really my whole point about this. The only
There's
time
just
I
not
ever
that
see
many
those
of
things,
you, unfortunately.
it's true. Like, if you don't get me, this is my whole point. If you don't get me or they don't get you, you know, somebody who cares, then they get the other guy who's in the program that got them certified, but they still have a shitty house. So that is the problem that I have with those programs. You're 100% right. There ain't a ton of me and you out there, but guess what? There is a lot of these other guys, and they can all get you certified. So who do you want? You know?
Yeah,
That's all I got to say about that.
Yeah. You know how you get a building inspection before you buy a house? Like, why isn't a blower door part of that? You could, when you go to buy a new house, you get
Some of them
inspected to
are.
run
The
through
more
everything.
savvy building inspectors are doing that.
Yeah. I don't know.
My
I haven't
buddy
seen
Dave
it, but-
works with a whole bunch of different building inspectors throughout the country. He's a provider. He's got a whole bunch of people in his providership that are building inspectors that are now HERS raters. There's a whole national movement of building inspectors that are tapping on HERS ratings to their services because it makes sense, and it just teaches them another thing, value add to the service that they already have.
Yeah, I'm sure those guys were never picking up on the insulation and air sealing problems that we now know cause problems, or duct leakage, or all kinds of stuff.
I've looked at a million building inspection reports, and they're so basic with what they say about the thermal stuff. And they're trying to sell a house, dude. These building inspectors, most of them work for the buyer or the seller. They're not trying to really expose every single problem that needs to be fixed to make the house a better place. They're saying, will you live in this and die or not? You know what I mean? Like,
Or like, how can I get you money off your bill, or it's sort of like get you money back off the price of the house, sort of.
Yeah, exactly. Let's get this in line with these other problems. You know, that's what they're having. So let's talk a little more about ventilation, because that's a very interesting subject to everybody in the world, that's in our world anyway right now, whether it's HVAC or otherwise. And there's a lot of different ways to accomplish that. We talked about delivering directly to the rooms and the challenges of balancing it. What kind of flow hood are you using to balance that stuff with? What's your favorite tool?
So there aren't many flow hoods that will register 6 CFM. So the only one that I know of that does it accurately is the ASIN powered flow hood. So it actually has a fan inside of it, and it'll balance the flow and measure it that way. And so Retrotech sells it it's like a European thing. And
Thing's badass.
Yeah, it's nice, but it's expensive. And of course, you're supposed to get it calibrated once a year, which can get expensive as well. But I also for regular exhaust, I will use a flow hood, or Retrotech in Minneapolis make like a box that you put over it and just connect the pressure port to, which works great for exhaust, but for supply.
The exhaust box, I mean, that thing, there's nothing more accurate than that, because it's designed to the T for that. Because the closer you get to the diameter of the orifice you're measuring, the more accurate your airflow measurement's going to be. So like, that's why that box fits right up on that, on that exhaust fan. It's made for that. So like, that thing is perfect. Anecdotally, I have taken the Evergreen Telemetry's 8-inch hood, and it's their smaller hood. They have a big 2x2 that works for commercial hood, but they also have a smaller one that you can buy in a kit. And I've put it side by side with the Retrotech powered flow hood, and I have video evidence of it. We were getting readings very, very close to each other, and it's made for low flow exhaust and stuff like that. So anecdotally, more than anecdotally, they've done their own testing, and they have some independent letters saying that they've got it not on a large scale, but on a project by project basis. They got it accepted to tab out some big passive home projects before. So that's cool. One that I would throw out there, that the only other one I know of, and it's passive too. It's not powered, which is very surprising, but however they have that thing functioned or however they have that thing formed, just the size of it, and also too, the accuracy of their actual instrumentation makes it possible, it seems like, to meet the same plus or minus that RetroTech can make. Those guys RetroTech don't like me saying that.
That's great to hear because I don't like the RetroTech thing as much because it takes probably 45 seconds to take a measurement, which is super annoying when you're like, your hands are above your head trying to hold this thing up where you're trying to measure the kitchen exhaust flow. You're like holding it out under the thing and it takes too long. And if you're
taking like a couple hundred measurements in a day, boy, that is some times of your day for sure.
Right. Yeah, so I'll look into that. I mean, I'm honestly trying to get away from
and I do some commercial stuff too. So it's nice having the kit. It's the same manometer. It's the same everything for every piece of equipment. And also, their kit comes with a straight pitot, a static pressure probe, a temperature probe for hydronics. Like it comes with a bunch of different instrumentation and it all works off of the monitor. So it's a nice kit to have if you're out there doing inspections and stuff like that. I use it for almost everything. I love it.
Yeah, I would certainly look into it because, like I said before, I'm trying to get away from RetroTech.
No, I didn't get paid to say any of that. They don't endorse me. I would say, if you guys want to give me money, come on, I'll take it. I love your shit, and I'll let you pay me to talk about it. And him too. Neil too. Neil will talk about any of it for you.
But yeah, RetroTech has kind of annoyed me lately, so I'm trying to switch away from them. They're like, their customer service isn't the best, and honestly, their equipment is a little, I don't know. I shouldn't talk too much shit about them.
I like RetroTech. Like I mess with all their stuff. I just found that hood is way more convenient for me than the other one. I've used that thing since it came out. It's a funny story because I'm good friends with Joe Madash, and he used to work for RetroTech, and he was good friends with Colin, the owner of RetroTech. So when they were bringing that thing over from Germany, because they white label it. It's not their piece of equipment. It's and when they were bringing it over, I actually saw it. Probably before a lot of people because they had it at a conference and they were like, hey, what do you think about this thing? But the point I'm making is like that thing is made by the Swiss and it's like a freaking Swiss watch, dude. It's one of the best pieces, like from a standard of like the quality of the piece of equipment. It's probably one of the best quality pieces of equipment made. The precision that went into that is from the Swiss, and that is not to be rivaled at all. That thing is a badass piece of equipment from an accuracy and whatever quality of making standpoint. I can't get my words out there. Whatever I'm trying to say. So
equipment is a big expense every year for Herz Raider. We're spending tens of
plus
thousands
calibration, dude, and Fab, we got a ton of more equipment to get calibrated. It gets expensive. You got $5,000 a year calibration per set of equipment sometimes, just depending on what you're doing. So that's why people are like, "Can you come out and do this for $500?" I'm like, well, let me think about that. No, my calibration bills to pay. I have this, I have that. The overhead is a lot more than me just getting out of my car and putting a hood in there. Like people don't understand that piece of the business sometimes. Like you carry a pretty nice overhead doing all this inspection stuff.
Yeah. Insurance too has been a nightmare.
Well, that's another nightmare. So back to the passive home stuff. So tell me a little bit about how Philadelphia wound up. Are they incentivizing? Is that in the building code? Like, why is there so much passive home stuff going on?
That's a good question. So I don't know if you ever heard of Onion Flats, a guy named Tim McDonald. He, in 2016, went to the Pennsylvania Housing Authority and said, why don't you include passive house? So let me take a step back. The way that mortgage finance, affordable housing finance happens in Pennsylvania and New Jersey, at least, is all I could speak to, is the federal government gives them a bunch of money and then they award that money to affordable housing projects in the form of tax credits. And there's a lot more projects every year that apply for it than there's money. So they have a point system and there's all kinds of ways to get points. But one of them always was like a green building thing. So Tim actually championed to the Pennsylvania Housing Authority to add passive house as a 10-point thing into the QAP, qualified allocation plan. And for a few years, they built a bunch of multifamily affordable housing passive house projects in Pennsylvania because they were giving them tax credit points to do it. So people were getting it that way, getting the tax credits that way. But then somehow it got into Pennsylvania that like the other green building programs were equal to passive house. And so things like enterprise green communities, which is like 10% of the lift of passive house, also got awarded the same amount of points. So the amount of passive house projects actually dropped off. But since then, there's been a lot of single family interest. Like I'm working on four with two different builders, two different like projects, for spec home projects that are passive house. So they don't have buyers yet. They're just building them to hopefully sell them for a good price. And then I think there's just some interest. There's a pretty good passive house community that was started 15 years ago. That group of people that were meeting, architects and builders that were interested in it. And it became, along with some other groups of Living Building Challenge, Green Building United. So there's a pretty good green building community in Philadelphia. The Green Building United has a symposium every year. So there's a big conference, like a local conference where everybody gets together and talks about green building locally. So I guess there's a community for it. There's a bit of a spark for it. It is incentivized, but not any more than Energy Star. It's not like you get more for a passive house than you would Energy Star from Pico, which is the electricity provider.
What's your percentage of passive house stuff right now that you're doing out of all the work you're doing?
That's an interesting question. I do all kinds of things. I have like 5 or 6 larger projects that are going for Energy Star certification that are like 60-unit multifamily buildings. And then I'm working on 2 passive house projects that are renovations of row homes. So they gutted the inside and they're making them passive houses, which is super interesting. I could probably spend an hour talking about that. And then a few new ones. And then there's a few live proposals out. But passive house is not a huge part of what I do. It's a passion thing for me. It definitely doesn't keep me in business, but it's like it's
if it
good.
comes around, you'll take it because you like
absolutely. I mean, I don't know if there's any other, there's other raters in the area, but and they do like the larger building stuff for passive house, but there's not many like single family home passive house verifiers in the area. So
when we talked a little bit about HVAC systems, tell everybody, but what's the most common type? What's the most unusual type of system you've seen? What's the biggest challenge with HVAC that you see? Let's get into that whole nut a little bit there.
It's such a big range. So I see typical furnace ducted systems will, with like still gas, like I'm working on a Ziona Giretti home project that still has gas PTAC in it. That's like a through the wall thing. So typical systems can work. And then I see some of the more interesting stuff I'm working on are like these magic box systems. This one I'm working on right now is EOC. It's from Italy. It's an all-in-one package system. So it's an ERV and a heat pump. And there's no outdoor like condenser. It just pulls in air and exhausts air like an ERV, but uses that ERV recovery as the condenser. So it's doing heat recovery with the condenser, but it's all inside.
Is that like the serve units and Minotaur and stuff? Similar?
Right, Minotaur is another version of that, but it's it's like bigger than the Minotaur. I don't know. Actually, I haven't looked at Minotaur in a while. If they have a bigger system now, but it's a little bigger than that. It could serve
there
like
used to be another one, or there is another one, SERV or Serve or something like that. I forgot the exact. There's another American version of Minotaur.
Yeah,
they're almost the same exact thing. And I've had some experience. I've designed a Minotaur before my request. It's not something I chose to specify, but they asked to use their systems in a passive home job. And there's some challenges. We had to use 2 of them in the project we were in just because it couldn't serve the whole load of the passive home, just because the heating or the cooling capacity of it is not that tremendous, really, like when it comes down to what it can do. And then if you get into different temperatures, I forget. There was a few challenges we came across and things like that.
I think the problem with the Minotaur is that it can only do one or the other. It can't exhaust and cool at the same time. It'll switch between the two. It'll exhaust for a while and then it'll close the damper and cool. And I think there's a bit of a challenge for that. You're trying to take a shower and cool the house. It doesn't really work super well, but.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, I think that with those systems, at first I thought it was pretty interesting, but now it seems challenging to service and to sort of get right. There's just too much stuff going on in one box that I think it can be difficult.
It's tempting because you want to be able to serve everything from one box. You want the simplicity. You need, from a cost standpoint, you get into a few different boxes most of the time. Most of the time we're doing passive home, it's going to be a Zender ERV and a couple of ductless units or something like that, or another strategy where we're trying to move a little bit of air through a bigger space than you normally would, because you don't need that much heating and cooling in these buildings typically. So I think the industry has found it's funny because every time you try to go away from ducted distribution back to say, hey, man, maybe there's a lot of benefits to what these American guys have been doing as long as we can get it right. We know there's some losses, but it does create a different comfort dynamic and expectation than you have in other places. If you go to Europe or any of these South American places where they don't have a lot of ducted systems, their comfort expectations are not what Americans have come to expect.
They don't need it to be 70
It's not,
when it's 90 out, right?
Yeah, I mean, and there's corners of the room or corners of the building that aren't as comfortable as the other, but that's okay because that's how those things work. They only throw 50 feet in front of them. They're not really throwing, or 20, not none of them are 50 feet, but 25, 30 feet in front of them. And that's just what it is. And there's going to be some dead zones, but you get $1 million house with dead zones in it because you tried to use ductless the wrong way. You're going to have complaints all day, every day for the rest of your life. So.
And the other problem is that the refrigerant, as I'm sure you know, is now flammable. So now in these multifamily buildings, they used to have these like heat pumps in each apartment with refrigerant lines running to the roof. They have to now do these fire rated chases.
Yeah. I got a whole
But
case study coming out on it, man. I had to design new heat pumps for historic buildings in downtown Cincinnati. And it was right after the A2L switch happened. And so, yeah, we had to deal with, trust me, dude, trying to get an insulated shaft through a 3-course brick building that's been there 100 years is no small feat.
Well, that's why these systems are so attractive. If you don't have to put a condenser on the roof, it's all in one. It's pulling the air right. It's super attractive.
Yeah, from that saying, hey, when you start factoring in stuff like that starts making a lot more sense because then you have a whole different thing to think about that's costing a lot of dollars over a lot of space, especially in these multifamily buildings.
Yeah, you got to put an RV in. You got to do the fire rated shaft. It becomes a lot more attractive.
Yeah, it's 184 units. You know what I mean? From a fire rated shaft. It's not the easiest thing in the world to do. You got a lot of line sets running through that one shaft, and it's usually not one shaft by the end of the day.
Yeah, tough. For sure.
That's all fun stuff. For sure. I think we're probably pushing our hour here. A couple things. One, tell everybody where to find you. Any social media stuff you want to shout out, anything you want to say about to promote yourself, feel free to do it.
Sure. Yeah, check my website out at lesenergy.com, lesnrg.com, and check out my Instagram at les.nrg at Instagram. And I'm definitely trying to do more whole building blow order tests. As I said, I'm the first certified special inspector in Philadelphia. So as the code changes, look me up. I'll help you with that. And yeah, it's been great being on the show.
Absolutely. So before we go, I ask everybody on the show this question that's parting. If you've listened to my show, you've heard it. If the world ended today and they ask you to leave one piece of advice on the wall behind you for the rest of society that comes after you, what would that advice be?
The best things in life are free.
Neil, thank you very much. It's been great having you. And I would love to get an update sometime on your big building testing and your special inspector status and see how all that went.
Yeah, it's been great. Thank you so much for having me.